I watched a mountain eat the sky. And from across the water, from the terrace of a villa in Misenum, I could do nothing but stand there. A boy with ink on his fingers and fear in his chest. Have you ever seen something so enormous that your mind refuses to believe it is real? That is what it was like. The whole southern horizon turned black in the middle of the afternoon. My name is Gaius. People would later call me Pliny the Younger. But on that morning, I was just a student. 17 years old, reading Livy in the shade of a courtyard while the sun heated the stone. The villa belonged to my uncle. He was the commander of the Roman fleet at Misenum, the greatest naval base in the empire. My uncle was the most curious man I ever knew. He kept notebooks the way other men keep weapons, dozens of them, filled with observations about plants and clouds and the habits of dolphins. That morning I could hear the sea. The bay was flat and silver, and the fishing boats moved across it like insects on glass. My mother sat nearby, mending a tunic. The slaves carried water from the well. Somewhere in the kitchen, bread was being pulled from the oven. A normal day, the kind you forget the moment it ends. Except this one would never end. Not for me. Misenum sits on a rocky headland at the northern curve of the Bay of Naples. From the terrace, you can see the whole bay, the islands, the fishing villages clinging to the coast. And there, to the southeast, rising above everything like a sleeping god, was Vesuvius. It was green then. Vineyards climbed its slopes. Farmers praised the soil. The wine from Vesuvius was cheap and strong, and everyone drank it. Nobody feared the mountain. Nobody even thought of it as a volcano. That word did not exist yet. I should tell you about my uncle, because what happened next only makes sense if you understand the kind of man he was. Pliny the Elder, admiral, naturalist, author of 37 volumes of natural history. He believed that the purpose of a human life was to observe, to record, and to understand. He slept little. He read constantly. He had a slave read aloud to him during meals so that no moment was wasted. He once told me that a man who stops being curious has already begun to die. I did not understand what he meant. Not until that afternoon. It was about 1 hour after midday. I was reading. My mother was resting. The house was quiet. She came to me. She said, "Look at that cloud." I put down my book and walked to the terrace. What I saw made no sense. A column of smoke was rising from Vesuvius. Not like a cooking fire, not like a forest burning on a hillside. It rose straight up into the sky, impossibly tall. And then it spread outward at the top, like the branches of a pine tree. The trunk of that tree was white, but the branches were dark, streaked with grey and brown, and something that looked almost like earth. It kept rising. It did not stop. I remember thinking it was the most extraordinary thing I had ever seen. And I remember the exact moment that wonder turned to fear. My uncle saw it too. His reaction was not mine. Where I felt dread, he felt excitement. He ordered a fast galley prepared. He wanted to get closer, to study the cloud, to see what was happening on the far shore. Then, a message arrived. A woman named Rectina, who lived at the base of the mountain, had sent a slave by boat. She was begging for rescue. The roads were blocked. The only escape was by sea. My uncle changed his plan. He ordered the entire fleet, not one ship, but many. He was no longer going as a scientist. He was going as a savior. I wanted to go with him. He told me to stay, to keep studying. He said I would thank him later. I watched his ship pull away from the harbor, the oars cutting the water in rhythm. That was the last time I saw my uncle alive. The afternoon changed. The cloud over Vesuvius had grown until it covered the sun. On the far side of the bay, I knew, the cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum were directly beneath it. I tried to keep reading. The words meant nothing. My eyes moved, but my mind was on the water. By evening, the earth began to shake.
Not a single jolt, but a long, rolling tremor that made the walls groan. The water in the courtyard fountain sloshed over the rim and darkened the stone. My mother gripped my arm and said we should leave. I told her to wait. I told her the tremors would stop. They did not stop. Through the night, the shaking continued. It came in waves. The walls creaked. Plaster dust fell from the ceiling and landed in my hair and on the pages of my open book. Outside, I could hear people shouting, dogs barking. Somewhere a donkey screamed and would not stop. I moved my lamp closer to the page and tried again to read. This is what I did when I was afraid. I read, as if the words of dead men could hold the living world together. Then the ash began to fall. It started softly, like grey snow. I held out my hand and caught a flake, and it was warm. Then it came heavier. Within an hour, the courtyard was covered. The ash did not melt. It piled up, dry and gritty, and it smelled of sulfur and something metallic, something I had never smelled before. I tied a cloth over my mouth. My mother did the same. The slaves were panicking. Some had already run. The buildings around us were groaning under the weight. I heard a roof collapse somewhere to the east, then another. We decided to leave. My mother and I, and a few of the household slaves. We walked out into the street, and the world had changed. The air was thick and grey. Every breath was a fight. Ash stung my eyes, and I could barely keep them open. People were moving in every direction. Some carried bundles, some carried children. Some carried nothing at all and walked as if asleep. I held my mother's hand. She was 53 years old, and she was not fast. She told me to go ahead, to save myself. I told her I would not leave her. We would walk together, or not at all. She did not argue. She took my arm, and we walked. The darkness was absolute, not twilight, not the darkness of a moonless night. This was something else. This was the darkness of a sealed room. No light from any direction. People around us were screaming. Some were calling out for their children. Some were calling out for their gods. Some were saying this was the end of the world, that the sun had been destroyed. I was not sure they were wrong. We sat down at the side of the road. There was nowhere to go. The ash was falling so thick that it was building on our shoulders and in our laps. I brushed it from my mother's hair. She was whispering a prayer. I could feel her hand shaking in mine. A man near us lit a torch. The flame was small and orange, and it barely cut the dark. But I had never been so grateful for light in my life. I thought of my uncle, out there on the water, sailing toward the mountain, not away from it. I thought of the people in Pompeii, 20,000 souls directly under the cloud. I did not know what was happening to them. I did not know that some of them, were already dead. With a wall of gas, hotter than an oven, that swept through their streets at the speed of a racing chariot and stopped every heart in an instant. They never felt it. That is the one mercy. And then the light came back. Not suddenly, not like a curtain being pulled. It crept. A faint grey glow in the east, as if the sky itself was remembering what it was supposed to do. My mother lifted her head. She looked at me, and there was ash in her eyelashes, and I almost laughed. I helped her stand. We were covered in grey dust from head to foot. Everyone was. We looked like statues of ourselves. The sun came through, weak and yellow. Not the bright Mediterranean sun I knew, but it was there. The world had not ended. We walked back toward the villa. The streets were buried under ash a foot deep. Buildings had cracked, trees were bent and grey. But we were alive. That fact felt enormous and strange, like a gift I had not asked for and did not fully understand. The news about my uncle came 2 days later. He had reached the shore at Stabiae, south of Vesuvius. He had refused to leave while others were still in danger. He had gone to sleep in a friend's house while the world shook apart around him.
In the morning, his companions found him. He was lying on the beach, still and quiet. The air had killed him. The volcanic gases that drifted across the water in the dark. He was 55 years old. I grieved for him. I grieve for him still. But I also understood something. He had sailed toward the danger, not away from it. He had risked his life because someone on the far shore was afraid and alone and had asked for help. That is not the story of a man who gave up. That is the story of a man who chose something larger than himself. Years later, the historian Tacitus asked me to write down what I remembered. I sat at my desk with a fresh piece of papyrus and a steady hand. And I did what my uncle taught me. I observed, I recorded, I told the truth. The city of Pompeii was buried under 6 meters of ash and stone. The world forgot it existed. 17 centuries passed. The fields above it were planted with crops. Houses were built. People walked over the streets of the dead and never knew. Then, in 1748, a team of workers digging a canal struck something hard beneath the soil. A wall, painted with bright colours that had not faded in nearly 2,000 years. They kept digging. They found streets, shops, a bakery with loaves still in the oven, a fountain with a bronze spout shaped like a dolphin. They found the people. Not bones, not dust, shapes, hollow spaces in the hardened ash where bodies had been. A man named Giuseppe Fiorelli figured out that if you poured plaster into those hollow spaces, the ash would give back what it had taken. And it did. The plaster filled the voids, and when the ash was chipped away, there they were. The people of Pompeii, frozen in their final moment. A mother holding a child against her chest, a man covering his face with his hands, a dog still chained, twisting against the rope. They are not statues. They are casts of real people, of the last thing they ever did. I wrote my letters to Tacitus so that the truth would survive. I did not know that the mountain itself was keeping a record far more honest than mine. Every frozen gesture, every last embrace, every hand reaching for someone it would never hold again, the mountain remembered what the world forgot. If this story stayed with you, if you felt something standing in that darkness beside me, then you understand why I tell these stories. Subscribe so you do not miss the next one. Leave a comment and tell me which moment hit you the hardest. Like this video so others can find it too. My name is Gaius Plinius Caecilius Secundus. I was there, and now, so were you.